The American conquest of the Philippines occurred throughout 1900 as American troops gradually defeated the Philippine Army. Remnants of this army continued to fight as guerrillas in rural areas, while the U.S. Army deployed over 70,000 troops to occupy and run this new American colony. This agitated some locals, while drunken American soldiers often provoked incidents, especially in pursuit of local women. This led to armed attacks on American occupiers. The well-trained and better-equipped American soldiers rarely had trouble dealing with local insurgents, but in several cases, large groups of Filipinos inflicted heavy casualties. This resulted in negative newspaper stories back home, since uprisings did not match rhetoric that Filipinos had been liberated. Attacks angered American generals, who implemented genocide tactics used back home against Indian tribes. Army Brigadier General Samuel Young advocated the use of, quote, remedial measures that proved successful with the Apaches, end quote. The basic strategy was to concentrate the population in towns and camps, hence the term concentration camp. This was done in the Philippines. Then soldiers roamed the countryside or traveled aboard boats to burn houses and food stocks, destroy fishing boats, and shoot farm animals and defiant villagers who refused to live in the camps. In the town of Balangig, all Filipino men were required to stay in 2 large tents after sundown and didn't appreciate this imprisonment. On September 28, 1901, while most of the 74 American soldiers were eating breakfast, women smuggled them large bolo knives. Hundreds suddenly attacked the American soldiers, resulting in 54 dead and 18 wounded, while survivors fled. This infuriated American generals and resulted in punitive expeditions and a reign of terror. U.S. Army General Jacob Smith issued his famous Circular No. 6, which stated his plans for crushing all resistance on the island of Samar. Quote, I want no prisoners. I wish you to kill and burn, and the more you burn and kill, the better it will please me. He tasked his men to reduce the large island of Samar into a howling wilderness, and to kill all males older than 10 years. Leonard F. Adams of the 1st Washington Volunteers wrote home after seeing the results, quote, there were 1,008 dead niggers and a great many wounded. We burned all their houses. I don't know how many men, women, and children the Tennessee boys did kill. They would not take any prisoners. One company of Tennessee boys was sent to headquarters with 30 prisoners and got there with about 100 chickens and no prisoners, end quote. Army Brigadier General Franklin Bell told the press, quote, I can't say how long it will take us to make a wilderness of that country, but it will eventually take place, end quote. From January to April 1902, Bell launched 44 expeditions to shoot or burn anything of value. Just one expedition destroyed 500 tons of rice and corn, hundreds of hogs and chickens, 6,000 houses, 200 oxen, 800 cattle, and 680 horses. U.S. military forays descended into a series of atrocities that included the torture and massacre of civilians and the burning of entire villages. American soldiers often employed water torture to gather information and tortured those most likely to know details, like the local mayor, police chief, and priest. The exact number of civilians massacred by U.S. troops will never be known, but Filipino historians believe it was around 50,000 killed from 1900 to 1902. A much larger number died from the resulting famine and disease. An influential newspaper, the San Francisco Argonaut, supported this effort and explained, quote, we do not want the Filipinos, we want the Philippines. The islands are enormously rich, but unfortunately they are infested with Filipinos, end quote. Hundreds of Filipinos were publicly lynched by the U.S. Army. Many American soldiers disapproved, and at least 20 deserted. 6 black deserters fought alongside the insurgents. 2 were captured and hanged by the Army. News stories about these atrocities upset the American public and most politicians. On April 15, 1902, Secretary of War Elihu Root sent orders to relieve some Army officers of duty and to court-martial General Jacob Smith. He stated that President Theodore Roosevelt, quote, intends to see that the most rigorous care is exercised to detect and prevent any cruelty or brutality, and that men who are guilty thereof are punished, end quote. General Smith, who had been court-martialed 3 times during his career and had ordered the killing of every male over age 10, was found guilty and forced to retire. A few junior Army officers received minor administrative punishment. The Army ended its reign of terror and was surprised when frictions with the locals quickly disappeared and insurgent attacks became rare. Guilty generals remained untouched. Adna Shafi had spent 30 years fighting Indians in the American West. He had risen to the rank of Major General and became military governor of the Philippines. Shafi had told his officers that it was his intention to, quote, give the Filipinos bayonet rule for years to come. His orders were largely responsible for these atrocities, yet he was promoted and served as Chief of Staff of the Army from 1904 to 1906. Brigadier General Robert Hughes, U.S. Commander in Manila, was promoted on return to the States and appeared before a Senate committee in 1902 to explain why American soldiers killed women and children. He told the senators, quote, the women and children are part of the family, and where, if you wish to inflict punishment, you can punish the man probably worse in that way than any other, end quote. When asked if this violated the rules of a civilized society, Hughes replied, quote, these people are not civilized.